Hello everyone! This is Remlays from 40k Theories, and welcome to the February 2022 edition of the Patreon Q&A sessions. As always, if you would like your questions answered, then click the link in the video description below and help support the channel by becoming a patron. Now, let's jump into the questions. Voice of the Emperor asks, is Orkflesh edible / safe to eat? I remember vaguely recalling a story, I think it was with the Valhallans, the Valhallan Guardsman Regiment, where they ran out of supplies and were forced to start cooking the corpses of the orcs they killed in order to, survive. Though I don't know the name of the story off the top of my head, and it might even be a bit of fan fiction, so take that with a pinch of salt. Considering that, to my knowledge, there's been no documented evidence of Orkflesh being toxic or poisonous, I would assume it's safe to eat so long as it's, thoroughly cooked. Who is Lord Gravinius? I know he's an Astartes that threw a Bane blade at a Chaos Titan, but that's it. No idea, this is the first time I've ever heard of him. Griffin of Might asks, if a group of Astartes from before the Heresy appeared in the current setting via warp shenanigans, what would happen to them and their tech, especially if they are of traitor stock but still seem to be loyal? This would probably be on a case-by-case basis. There have been instances where Space Marines from the time of the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy have been discovered by modern Imperial forces. The most notable example being that lone lunar wolf from the time of the Horus Heresy, or time of the Great Crusade rather, being discovered by the Flesh Terrors, and there have been Heresy-era Space Marines from the Ultramarines and the Salamanders who were actually unleashed from Trajan's prison during the Battle of Cadia. If they were loyal, I would imagine that they would probably be made, honorary members of, an existing chapter, depending on how many there are, or if there's if it's an entire Horus Heresy era chapter, like with the Emperor's Children Death Eagles, for example, it's possible that they could be made into an established chapter on their own, but that'll probably only occur after they've undergone extensive, gene seed testing and, spiritual purity tests and stuff like that by the Inquisition, and stuff like that. As for their tech, I suppose it depends on what technology they actually had access to. If they only had things like, your standard issue bolters and power armor and stuff like that, I don't really imagine that much will come of it, to be honest. If they had a Contemptor class Dreadnought, that might be a different story. How are Salamanders viewed by the Ecclesiarchy and the Adeptus Sororitas and Inquisition? As far as I'm aware, the Inquisition and the Ecclesiarchy have no ill feelings towards the Salamanders. Brent Feast asks, do we know of any canon Chaos Warbands definitively descended from the Ultramarines? I'm not sure if this counts because it's technically a Renegade Warband rather than a Chaos Space Marine Warband, but the third company of the, the Avenging Suns chapter, I believe, they basically, they were suffering heavy casualties during the assault, and the captain basically went, fuck this, and basically abandoned the Imperium, and everyone under his command who didn't follow him, well, everyone under his command did follow him rather, painted over the Imperial symbols with other ones. They basically just, erased them. Anyone who refused to follow them was killed, and they decided to bugger off into the Eye of Terror, so that probably counts. There was also a warband led by Constantinius of the Sons of Gilman chapter, but that warband only started off with a single squad of, Ultramarine descended Space Marines. It went on to basically encompass a bunch of other different Chaos Space Marine warbands when Constantinius basically started conquering all the other warbands in the sector. Are the Plague of Unbelief and Eldari Wraith constructs the closest equivalent 40k has to necromancy, or is there anything else more closely resembling the fantasy trope? There is, it's in an audio drama, I think it's the Greyfax one, like an Inquisitor Greyfax one, where an Inquisitor basically bonds his spirit to the skeleton of a dead Grey Knight, and is able to, achieve animus through it. So I suppose that counts, because it's reanimating a skeleton, so, yeah. But aside from that, I don't know of any other instances off the top of my head. What is your favourite Warhammer Fantasy / Age of Sigmar faction? Lizardmen all the way. Samurai of the Emperor asks, Samurai Space Marines, are they real? To quote the meme, yes, but actually no. There was a chapter called The Emperor's Shadows whose sole appearance was in a book about how to paint Space Marines, but they were a staff army and they have no lore at all beyond the fact the Emperor's Shadows are a Space Marine chapter. They are samurai themed. That is it. To my knowledge at least, I don't know of anything else pertaining to them at this particular point in time. Now, whether the chapter is actually canon or not, it's somewhat debatable. I mean, yes, there was, a chapter that was featured in an official Games Workshop publication, but it was also a Games Workshop staff member's army. So if you start canonizing one staff member's army, you can't basically start canonizing all of them. That opens up a whole can of worms. Given the fact that they have no lore and no official artwork, and the only official depiction of them is a photograph of a staff member's army in a How to Paint Space Marine book, whether you want to choose them to be canon or not is up to you, I suppose. In terms of models, the closest thing you're going to get is actually from the Horus Heresy White Scars range. Now yes, I know the White Scars are Mongolian themed rather than feudal Japan themed, but the closest equipment you have is with the Kinza model. Because, his face mask, his, shoulder pads and the side skirts he has, it's very evocative of samurai lacquer armor and stuff like that. So he's the closest equipment you're going to get in terms of models, I feel. Austin Horner asks, if you could choose any lore character to get a model, who would it be? A lore character to get a model? I suppose I could throw a bone to the Imperial Fist and say, how about their Chapter Master? Because I don't think any of their Chapter Masters have had models. Personal preference though, I would like Joe Sahal please, because, Joe Sahal was awesome. Aside from that, maybe Luther for the Horus Heresy? That'd be cool. Or how about, Joe Sahal, or alternatively, Nasir Amit, the founder of the Flesh Terrors. Because, he's an absolute badass. Why hasn't he got a tabletop mini for Horus Heresy? I don't know. Fix it, Forge World, please. Zero Hits asks, do members of the Eyes of the Emperor have any books or stories about them? Yes, check out the novella Auric Gods. One of the main characters in that is an Eye of the Emperor. Also, fun fact, the antagonists in that book are the Illuminati, which is awesome! Good first edition callback there. And finally, Brandon A asks, can someone become a demon prince without the help of the Chaos Gods? I know back in 2nd edition, it was said that if Azak Araman gets into the Black Library, he will be able to become a god. So I suppose at the very least it is theoretically possible that someone can become a demon prince without the Chaos Gods' help, but I find it personally somewhat unlikely, or at the very least, improbable. Could we get a 40k Lore for Newcomers episode on Lord Inquisitor Remlays? I technically already did the homebrew episode about the Ordo Theoreticus, so I suppose that counts. Check that out. What other genre of books should Black Library do? They have crime, horror, and even children's books. I'm gonna go out there and say, do Warhammer Romance, just so we can actually get a real life example of that Krieg romance novel that was mentioned in the Carrion Throne novel. My love for you is second only to my devotion to the Emperor, or something to that effect. So yeah, do Warhammer Romance just so we can get a real life version of that. That would be awesome, thanks. And that concludes this edition of the Patreon Q&A sessions. As always, if you would like your questions answered, then click the link in the video description below and help support the channel by becoming a patron. Until next time, this has been Remlays from 40k Theories, and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye!